Hey everybody, it's Joe McCall, wholesalingleaseoptions.com. I want to say hello, and I got some more questions here I'm going to answer by a great student, David. So, David, I hope you don't mind, but I'm going to answer these questions here for everybody because they're great questions. First one is, if a realtor is involved in a rent-to-own or lease option, how much of the non-refundable deposit should I give her up front? I'm assuming she gets the remainder at closing, similar to a sandwich lease option. Well, the way we handle realtors is when we're doing a property that's listed with the realtor, what the owner of the home pays the realtor is entirely between them. If a house is already listed and I find a seller wanting to do a lease purchase and the seller has told the realtor that's what they want to do, what the realtor gets paid is totally none of my business. That's all between the seller and the realtor. Normally what happens is when a realtor has a listing and the house goes up, let's say the seller says, you know what, I just want to rent the house out. I can't wait to sell it anymore. Then usually what happens is the seller will pay the realtor a half month's rent or a full month's rent. And then if the seller sells it to somebody, usually in the listing agreement, there's a limit, like within the next 12 months, any buyer who buys the house has to pay, or the realtor has to get paid a commission. Anyway, if you are working directly with a realtor and a realtor brings you a listing, I normally pay the realtor half of a month's rent. And depending on if we can build it into the price of the home, they can get the rest of their commission and maybe even both sides of the commission when the tenant buyer buys the home. So it's all negotiable. I don't advise people to go after listed properties when they're doing the wholesaling lease option strategy. I suggest that people go after the low-hanging fruit, which is the for rent by owner and the for sale by owner ads in Craigslist and many, many different sites. But if you do come across a lead that's listed by the realtor, I tell the sellers, we work with realtors, I tell the sellers don't cancel your listing agreement, but I let them know that if we do find a tenant buyer for the house, you may have to pay your realtor some commission, but I'm not paying them any commission out of it. Sometimes, though, if a deal is really good enough and the realtor brings me a deal, I may pay them the entire 1 month's rent, depending on how fast I can sell the home. So it's all negotiable. Good question, though. Second question is, do I offer a seller the price that is close to today's fair market value, or the estimated fair market value when the house closes in 1 or 2 years based on appreciation? I normally set the option price today, or I normally set the option price for what the house will be, for an option price for a couple years down the road, what it's worth today. Does that make sense? Okay, so if the house is worth 150 today, I normally will set the option price at 150 in a year or two down the road. However, sometimes if it's in a good area, if there's a wide range of comps, sometimes I'll set the option price maybe 3% higher than today's value, if I know that there are some comps that can justify that. The reason why is a year or two down the road, if something happens, I can pull up the comps that in a year down the road, I can pull up the comps that I pulled up today and show them this is how we justified our option price. So you got to understand too, nobody can predict what the market's going to do in 1 or 2 years. It doesn't matter if the housing market is going down or up. Nobody can predict what it's going to be like in 1 or 2 years. A lot of investors got into the problem and made a lot of mistakes by counting on appreciation and setting the option prices 5-10% higher in a year or two down the road. And that just does not work anymore. So set the price at what the house is worth today. Now, another thing that might happen sometimes is you find a seller who's really upside down. Maybe they owe $20,000 more than the house is worth. So if the house is worth $150 today and they owe $170, well, that may be a little too much. If they owe $155 and the house is worth $150 today, okay, I'll set the option price at maybe $160. That covers my fee that I make, but I'll set that option period out at least 3 to 5 years in the future. I make sure the seller understands that we can get you your price, but we're going to have to do a longer lease option term to let the house appreciate and to get back to where needs to be. So they understand that this is going to be a long-term lease purchase if there's that much room. So if a better example on the West Coast, if a house is worth $400,000 and they owe $420,000, I would set the option price at maybe $440,000. That would cover my fee, rent credits, but I'll make sure that sets out 3 to 5 years in the future. If they're way too upside down, then it's probably not even a deal that you should even pursue. So I hope that answers the question. Long answer to a short question. Generally, third question here. Do I offer a seller price? No. What determines the amount of renter credits? 20%, 30%, 50%. I normally try to do the most generous rent credits possible, and usually 30 to 50%. I make it clear to the seller these are rent credits that are just a credit on paper when the house sells. It's not money they have to set aside every month. It's just a credit on paper to cover the buyer's closing costs. It reduces the price of the home. So I try to do 30%. But it kind of relates to the previous question, because what if they owe $140,000 and the house is worth $140,000 today? Well, I add those rent credits to the price of the home, but you have to look at, well, how much room do I really have to add those rent credits onto the price of the home? So I generally do 30%. I add that to what the seller tells me is the minimum they need to walk away with, and then I also add my option deposit as my fee to that price. So if a seller says I need $140,000, the house is worth $150,000 today, I'll set the option price at $150,000, which covers maybe $4,000 or $5,000 for my fee, and it covers $5,000 or $6,000 for the rent credits. So the seller at the end of the day walks away when the house sells with $140,000, but the buyer is buying it for $150,000. So I hope that makes sense. And give me a call or email me if you guys have any other questions, all right? Take care. Bye-bye.